Coronavirus is a collection of viruses that can infect the respiratory system. In many cases, this virus only causes mild respiratory infection, such as flu. However, this virus can also cause severe respiratory infections, such as lung infections or pneumonia. Coronavirus infection is called COVID-19 and was first discovered in the city of Wuhan, China, at the end of December 2019. The virus is transmitted very quickly and has spread to almost all countries, including Indonesia, in just a few months.
First of all, we now have a name for the disease, and it is COVID-19, and I will spell it COVID-19. CO stands for corona, as you know. VI stands for virus, D for disease, so COVID. Under agreed guidelines between WHO, the World Health Organization, the World Organization for Animal Health, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, means WHO, OIE, and FAO of the United Nations, we had to find a name that did not refer to a geographical location, an animal, an individual or group of people, and which is also pronounceable and related to the disease. Having a name matters to prevent the use of other names that can be inaccurate or stigmatizing. It also gives us a standard format to use for any future coronavirus outbreaks. And now to the coronavirus situation. As of 6 a.m. Geneva time this morning, there were 42,708 confirmed cases reported in China. And tragically, we have now surpassed 1,000 deaths. 1,017 people in China have lost their lives to this virus. Most of the cases and most of the deaths are in Hubei province, Wuhan. Outside China, there are 393 cases in 24 countries and 1 death. Last week, I told you that we had engaged WHO's network of country representatives, as well as the United Nations resident coordinators in countries, to brief them on the outbreak and inform them about the steps they can take. I also briefed Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and we agreed to leverage the power of the entire UN system in the response. Today, we have also activated a UN crisis management team to be led by my General, Dr. Mike Ryan. This will help WHO focus on the health response, while the other agencies can bring their expertise to bear on the wider social, economic, and developmental implications of the outbreak, so we're all working to our strengths. So Mike will be the chief, still continue to be the chief emergency, and will also coordinate the whole UN response. As you know, today and tomorrow, WHO is hosting a meeting of more than 400 scientists from around the world, both in person and virtually. The main outcome we expect from this meeting is not immediate answers to every question that we have. The main outcome is an agreed roadmap on what questions we need to ask and how we will go about answering those questions. This is exactly what WHO is for, bringing the world together to coordinate the response.
Early symptoms of coronavirus infection or COVID-19 can resemble flu symptoms, namely fever, runny nose, dry cough, sore throat, and headache. After that, the symptom can disappear and heal or even aggravate. Patients with severe symptoms can experience high fever, cough with phlegm, even bleeding, shortness of breath, and chest pain. These symptoms appear when the body reacts against the coronavirus. In general, there are 3 symptoms that can indicate someone is infected with the coronavirus, namely fever, body temperature above 38 degrees Celsius, cough, hard to breathe. The symptoms of COVID-19 generally appear within 2 days to 2 weeks after the patient is exposed to the coronavirus.
Until now, there is no vaccine to prevent coronavirus infection or COVID-19. Therefore, the best prevention method is to avoid the factor that can cause you to be infected with this virus. Namely, the first, apply physical distancing, which is to maintain a minimum distance of 1 meter from other people, and now to go outside the house unless there is an urgent need. Second, use a mask when on the move in public place or crowds, including when you go shopping for groceries. Third, routinely wash your hands with water and soap or hand sanitizer containing at least 60% alcohol, especially after doing activities outside the home or in public place. Don't touch the eyes, mouth and nose before washing hands. Increase endurance with a healthy lifestyle. Avoid contact with the people with COVID-19, people who are suspect of being positively infected the coronavirus, or people who are sick with fever, cough, or runny nose. Cover your mouth and nose with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Then throw the tissue in the trash. Keep clean objects that are often touched and environmental clean lines, including clean the house. Okay. One way to prevent us infected with the coronavirus is to wear a mask. By wearing a mask if you want to travel, it can reduce the potential for contracting the coronavirus. So, for France, you have to wear a mask if you have to go out of the house. May we introduce to you about our company called PT Idea Project. Our company produce masks which have a good quality. The goods we produce are goods of the highest quality and are well known throughout Indonesia. Therefore, we introduce to you our best manufactured goods.
How useful are face masks during the corona crisis? Experts can't really agree on this. Should we wear them? And if so, who should wear them? Do they protect me or the other person? And which types of masks make sense at all? In many Asian countries, face masks are regarded as one of the main weapons in the fight against the coronavirus. And in China, it's even forbidden to be on the streets without a mask. Now, here in Europe, we have mixed feelings about wearing masks. In times of scarcity, many believe masks should be reserved for healthcare workers who depend on protection. But that view seems to have changed recently. Now, more and more local authorities do recommend to wear masks in public. So let's talk about face masks and what they can do for us during a pandemic. Is wearing a face mask useful during the coronavirus crisis, or is it all just nonsense? Opinions are divided. But there seems to be growing consensus that we can't stay in permanent crisis mode. But how do we end the lockdown without risking a rise in new cases and consequently a higher death toll? Could compulsory face mask policies be the answer? Well, in a moment, we'll talk to an expert from the WHO. But first, this report.
Not all respirator masks are created equal. We can generally distinguish between three main types. So-called filtering face piece, or FFP masks, fit snugly around the nose, mouth, and chin and filter out the tiniest airborne particles. The most effective type lets no viruses in or out. An exhalation valve makes breathing easier but increases the risk of viruses escaping. So an unvalved FFP mask protects both the wearer and the person they encounter. With a valve, it only reliably protects the wearer. FFP masks are in short supply worldwide, so they should be mainly reserved for medical personnel. A mask that's often seen nowadays is this simple protective facepiece for the mouth and nose. Known as a surgical mask, it consists of several layers of paper or non-woven fabric with a thin wire to make it fit over the nose. When the wearer coughs or sneezes, the surgical mask blocks the large droplets. But on inhalation, air also flows in over the sides. That means it mainly protects others from infection rather than the wearer. Once the mask is wet from breathing after 8 hours wearing time at the most, it has to be discarded. In the COVID-19 crisis, professionally manufactured masks are in short supply. That's led to a flourishing cottage industry in DIY masks. Whether using handkerchiefs, t-shirts, or vacuum cleaner bags, people all around the world are revving up their sewing machines. A textile mask functions rather like a protective mask made of paper, but generally has a poor seal and blocks only a third of the droplets that a surgical mask does, according to a study. However, a cloth mask can be washed and reused. The most important thing is, no matter which mask you wear, it can only be effective if used with hygiene measures, like thorough hand washing and keeping a safe distance from others.
And still, some people say any mask is better than none. Others, however, warn that masks give people a false sense of security. For more, I'm joined now by Professor Ben Cowling at the University of Hong Kong. His research there focuses on respiratory virus transmission and the impact of control measures. And Professor Cowling is also a co-director of the WHO Collaborating Centre for Infectious Disease, Epidemiology and Control at the HKU School of Public Health. Good to have you with us. So please, there are still a lot of mask critics out there, and they say that there's simply not enough evidence that wearing masks could actually stop or at least reduce the spread of the virus. You, however, were involved in a study that was published just last week. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So the study that we did last week was a very careful experimental study in a laboratory of how much virus comes out of the mouths of people with influenza or common cold infections, including common cold coronavirus. And we found a lot of virus in the exhale breath, not only in the large droplets, but also in the small particle aerosols. And the second part of the study, we looked at how well face masks blocked that virus from getting into the environment. We captured all of the exhale breath that these patients were breathing out, and we found substantial reductions in the virus that was able to get into the environment when those patients wore surgical face masks, including influenza and including human coronavirus.
Well, that sounds to me like the study says that we should wear face masks, and perhaps it should even be mandatory. What do you say?
I think we need to be careful not to think that face masks are a magic weapon against COVID. We know the best things that we can do in the community is stay at home, stay away from other people, because that's what will definitely stop transmission. But then if we do need to go out, I think it might be better if people were wearing a mask than if they weren't. But you mentioned at the beginning the supply limitations is one of the big challenges to that kind of policy.
All right, just one more question about this discussion around whether or not we should wear face masks, because it's also linked to fears that a SARS-CoV-2 could be airborne. What do we know about that?
We don't know. I think the jury's still out. In the clip that you just played now, you mentioned that face masks block the large droplets from coming out of someone who's infected, but for the other person who's wearing them, some of the air comes in the sides. Actually, in both cases, the air will come in the sides and leak, but they can still protect against droplets. What we found in our study was that actually surgical masks could block many of the aerosol particles as well. So even if SARS-CoV-2 is airborne, a surgical mask could still provide some benefit. Obviously, not as much as it would against the large respiratory droplets, but it could still provide some benefit.
Right, and as you mentioned earlier, surgical mask, well, any kind of mask really, they're in short supply right now. A lot of people are turning to DIY masks. What kind of mask makes sense in your view for the general public?
Well, I think any mask is better than no mask, but we know that materials that are a bit thicker probably have better filtration performance. So a cotton mask, a cloth mask is probably better than a scarf. But we actually don't know that much. There haven't been that many studies on the different choices. And I think that's now one of the priorities.
Now, you already mentioned that a mask can't replace measures like social distancing or washing your hands. But there's a lot of discussion now in Europe about an exit strategy from the lockdown. Can face masks help us return to an almost normal life? So are they a prerequisite for ending the lockdown?
I don't think masks are going to be a magic weapon that lets life go back to normal if people were just wearing masks and washing their hands. I think they will do something, but probably not enough to allow life to otherwise return to normal. I think we're still going to need a lot of social distancing and the other measures to test and trace. But maybe if we do the masks as well, every little bit will help.
Is there a downside to wearing a face mask, or why is there such a reluctance amongst even experts of recommending it? You say any mask is better than none, so is there a downside we should know about?
Yeah, some experts have been saying that perhaps people could choose between staying at home or going out, and it's better to stay at home. Everybody agrees that. But then if there was a mask available, maybe that person would go out with a mask instead of staying at home with no mask. And actually, it's better to stay at home. But if you do really need to go out, it should be better to wear a mask than not wear a mask. I think the experts are really saying there could be some consequence to behavior so that people wear the mask, they think it makes them protected, and actually it's more like a small benefit. And if everybody does it, then we get a small benefit as a community.
All right. Professor Ben Cowling there from the University of Hong Kong. Thank you so much for your time. And yes, do stay healthy. More and more people seem to think better be safe than sorry. A lot of colleagues here at DW already wear face masks, and I've got a very simple one in my bag for my way home. But be sure to wear them properly.
If you find yourself in a situation where wearing a mask is recommended, there are some important rules to follow. First, masks are only effective if they are used in combination with a good hand hygiene. Either use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. So, before touching the mask and putting it on, clean your hands. Check the mask for tears and holes, and make sure to check which side is the top. It's usually the one that has a metal strip in it. Masks do have an inside and an outside. The inside is usually the lighter colored one. Once you've figured that out, it's time to fit the mask on your face. Pinch the metal strip so it molds to the shape of your nose. Then cover your nose, mouth, and chin. Make sure there are no gaps between your face and the mask. When you're wearing a mask, don't touch it. And don't pull it up and down while wearing it. If you do touch it accidentally, wash your hands. The same goes for taking off the mask. Pull the elastic straps from behind your ears and don't touch the front of the mask and keep it away from your face. Discard the mask immediately in a closed bin and again, wash your hands. Masks like the one that I was just wearing should not be reused. Replace them as soon as they start to get damp. If you use a self-made mask from textile, those need to be washed at least 60 degrees after every use. So, stay safe and remember, the best way to protect yourself and others from the coronavirus is by being physically distant and keeping your hands clean.
Face masks, lockdown, and of course the constant fear of catching the virus. Many of us look for a way out of this nightmare by following conspiracy theories that explain what really happens, or by discovering old health myths that promise to keep us safe. Beware the bearers of false gifts. Better listen to DW's Derek Williams. Time for your questions.
Is the virus killed by cold weather and snow?
Don't forget that to the best of our knowledge, this virus appeared in Wuhan in China last winter. It was first reported on December 31st to the WHO. That's a day when temperatures in the city were just a few degrees above freezing. Much of the current pandemic has occurred in the northern hemisphere in winter, so there's no reason to believe that cold weather kills SARS-CoV-2. Like influenza and other coronaviruses, it seems to transmit quite well when temperatures are low, possibly because that's when people are spending lots of time together indoors.
Can you kill the virus by spraying alcohol or chlorine on your body?
Okay, this is a really bad idea. The only place on your body where you should use alcohol-based sanitizers is on your hands, because they are what transmits the virus to your face. That's how it enters your body, through the membranes in your nose or mouth, or also your eyes. And when using hand sanitizers, you should pay close attention to recommendations about how frequently they can be used without causing damage to your skin. Don't ever spray a sanitizer or chemical on your body or your face. You'll do no good, and you'll possibly do a lot of harm.
Is there a connection between COVID-19 and 5G networks?
You're referring to the conspiracy theory currently making the rounds on a lot of social media platforms that the spread of the virus is somehow linked to the spread of 5G technology. Now, this was a brand new myth for me, and at first I couldn't believe it was serious because the idea is so patently absurd. But apparently, people are taking it seriously enough to go out and set fire to mobile communications masts. Folks, let's get something straight. This disease is caused by a virus, not radio waves. Let me repeat that. It's caused by a virus, not by radio waves. Every national and international health body on the planet agrees on that. So, if you're somehow involved in spreading this idea, please stop. And especially stop if you're one of the ones trying to burn down telecommunications infrastructure. Emergency service personnel have much more important things to deal with at the moment.
Derek Williams there, setting the record straight. And he'll be back tomorrow, Good Friday, to answer your questions.
The benefit of proxy masks that we produce with other masks is, first, of course, this mask is easy to get. You can find it in mini markets, pharmacies, or hypermarket. Second, besides being a short lot, this mask has relatively affordable price. You can even buy masks with carton packaging at a low price. Regarding its use, this mask this mask is not tight when used because of its large shape, so it can cover the face well. And the last, this mask is a material that is quite soft and doesn't feel raw. In addition, there are many interesting colors and a variety of motifs if you want to wear a mask for your little one.
And we have promoted our product via online. So we can order via online like the Shopee application using pop-up ads that have been verified by Google. For the price of our company, we have determined to purchase one box of masks containing 50 boxes. Each box contains 50 pieces of masks at a price of 150,000. If we purchase more than 50 boxes from the company, we will give a bonus of 1 box mask. %10 of the profit from the company will be donated in the form of personal protective equipment and masks to hospitals that need it. Our company sells products and at the same time do good deeds in order to maintain the togetherness of fellow human beings. For that, let us implement a healthy lifestyle by using masks in daily activities while doing good deeds to maintain mutual unity among each other.
This is a video made by a group of German physicists. The circle in the background is a kind of mirror that, combined with a special photography technique, allows you to see the flow of air. In this case, it is showing how far air particles travel when someone breathes, and when they cough, which makes the respiratory particles travel further and faster. This is what it looks like when someone coughs into their hand and into their elbow. And this shows the travel of air particles when coughing while wearing 2 types of masks, a dust mask and a surgical mask. This isn't a scientific study. It simply shows something face masks do very well. They limit how far away from you respiratory particles can travel. But whether you've been told to wear a face mask to prevent the spread of COVID-19 probably depends on where you live. In some East Asian countries, it's already common practice. Some European countries have also started mandating face masks in public spaces. But in the US, the message from the federal government has been inconsistent.
There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. It's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is.
CDC recommends wearing cloth face coverings in public settings where other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain.
This is voluntary. I don't think I'm going to be doing it.
Unless you live somewhere that mandates it, whether you wear a face mask is probably up to you. But making that decision for yourself is a lot easier if you understand what face masks can actually do, and what they can't. Here's where the experts agree. If you are sick and you leave the house, you should wear a face mask because it keeps your germs in. Most of the uncertainty around masks is related to a separate question, whether healthy people should wear them too. Right away, though, that distinction between sick with COVID-19 and healthy is more complicated than it sounds. People who catch COVID-19 don't feel symptoms for 5 to 6 days on average, and even up to 14 days, but are contagious before that. And based on what we know right now, about 25% of people who catch it never show symptoms at all, but are also contagious. In other words, especially with COVID-19, feeling healthy doesn't necessarily mean you don't have it.
I think we should all be acting and also all assume that we're infected.
Shan So Lin is an expert on global public health, and Robert Hecht is a professor of clinical epidemiology. And they say the possibility of being asymptomatic is one of the best cases for universal mask wearing.
Those who are actually infected and don't know it are showing almost no symptoms. It's not maybe even primarily for their own health. It's for the health of their family and neighbors.
But let's say you definitely 100% do not have the virus. The first thing you need to know is that no mask can actually guarantee that you won't get it. Instead, the best way to think about face masks is as part of a larger set of protective measures, along with social distancing and hand washing. Used together, they don't protect you completely, but they dramatically lower your odds of infection.
I think of it as a protective triad with the virus trying to get in. And if you don't have one of the branches in it, then you're not protecting the whole thing. And if you didn't have a mask, could you do better with social distancing, hand washing? Sure, but having all three is really, really important.
To understand how that works, let's look at the 2 ways COVID-19 is transmitted. One way is by touching an infected surface and then touching your face. This is called fomite transmission. And frequent hand washing is the best defense against this. But wearing face masks correctly can play a role too.
Masks do a really good job of keeping you from touching your face.
The second way someone's respiratory particles can reach you is directly, like this, This is a slowed down recording of a sneeze. It shows the kinds of respiratory particles a sneeze emits and how far they travel. From a sick person, these droplets are packed with millions of viral particles that fall in close range and infect whatever they land on. Social distancing protects us from droplets by keeping you away from the particles emitted through sneezing, coughing, or even talking. But face masks could help there too.
So if someone sneezes a couple feet away from you, it'll protect some of the bigger splashes.
That also means face masks are especially important for people who don't have the privilege of being able to social distance.
That would be cops, that would be grocery clerks.
Taxis, Uber, FedEx, and UPS.
Anyone who's coming into contact with a lot of people and maybe can't always maintain that 6-foot distance.
Look at this video again, though, and you'll see that we also produce these longer range, smaller particles which evaporate and can leave the virus hanging in the air. These are called aerosols, and we still don't really know how infectious they are for the average person. But experts think they mostly pose a threat to medical workers who work up close to patients with COVID-19.
If you're a foot away from the patient who's coughing as you're trying to intubate them, aerosols are going everywhere. For you and me, you're just walking around, walking your dog, going to the grocery store, your risk is way higher from fomites.
A common mask that protects against aerosols is called an N95 respirator. Its name comes from its material's ability to filter out 95% of aerosol particles. It's also fitted to form a seal around your mouth and nose, so there's no leakage. In lots of places, N95s are in short supply because of diminished government stockpiles and disruptions in the supply chains. And that's true for all disposable masks, not just N95s. That's why the US Center for Disease Control says that unless you are a healthcare worker, you shouldn't be using either N95s or regular surgical masks. They are needed in hospitals, and the level of protection most people need can come from a simple cloth mask. The CDC recommends any kind of tightly woven cotton for the mask, or even a t-shirt. You can make them by consulting the countless internet tutorials out there, or buy them from the many vendors who manufacture them. But they only work if you wear them correctly.
So what kind of masks are you wearing? Do you have them handy? Could you show us?
We thought you might ask.
We thought you might ask.
This is all it takes to put it on. Just grab it by the loops. Keep your hands off the central part. Put it over your nose and mouth. Loop it around the ears. Be careful not to touch it when you're outside. Keep your hands away from your face. When you come back in after walking the dog or doing the groceries, do the same thing in reverse. Put it off to the side. Don't start playing with it. And then just at the end of the day, pop it in the washer.
You wash it every day?
I wash them every night. And, even if you don't have a washer, you can hand wash them every night. They're very small and they'll be dry by the next morning. So if people can have a couple, it would be better. But if you only have one, then just wash it at night.
Face masks highlight something important in the fight against COVID-19, that it isn't always about protecting yourself. It's about protecting the people around you. And if everyone is doing it, we all protect each other.
There's a visual messaging that comes from wearing a mask, a reminder to everybody that we're not in normal times now. Everyone needs to be doing everything they can to protect themselves and other people.